5 people were found shot dead inside a quiet farmhouse in rural England. A farmer, his wife, their adult daughter, and 2 6-year-old boys killed in their beds. At first, police said the explanation was simple and tragic. A mentally ill woman had snapped, murdered her family, and then taken her own life. But as days passed, that story began to unravel. What followed became one of the most controversial murder cases in British history, the White House Farm murders. White House Farm stood alone near the village of Tollishunt, Darcy, in Essex, surrounded by open fields and long country roads. Living there were Nevill Bamber, a retired RAF and airline pilot, who later ran White House Farm, and his wife, June. Also, living in the house was their adopted daughter, Sheila Caffell, who had recently moved back home with her twin sons, Daniel and Nicholas. Sheila was 28 years old and had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. She had struggled with her mental health for years, experiencing episodes that sometimes required hospitalization. Her marriage had collapsed, and she was trying to rebuild her life under her parents' roof. Nevill and June's other adopted child, Jeremy Bamber, did not live at the farm. He stayed in a nearby cottage and had a complicated relationship with his family, particularly with Sheila. Still, nothing about that quiet August night in 1985 suggested that the Bamber family would soon become a national headline. In the early hours of August 7th, 1985, Jeremy Bamber received a phone call that would change everything. According to Jeremy, his father sounded terrified. Nevill allegedly said that Sheila had gone mad and had picked up a gun. Jeremy later claimed he heard a loud bang, possibly a gunshot, before the line went dead. At around 3:30 in the morning, Jeremy called the police, reporting an emergency at White House Farm. Police arrived at the farmhouse shortly afterward. One detail immediately stood out. The house was locked from the inside. There were no signs of forced entry. After gaining access, officers stepped into a scene of unimaginable violence. Nevill Bamber was found downstairs, shot multiple times. June Bamber was discovered upstairs, also shot. In a bedroom, Sheila Caffell lay dead, with a .22 caliber rifle found nearby. And in another room, Daniel and Nicholas were found in their beds, both shot while they slept. Given Sheila's documented mental illness, investigators quickly formed a theory. They believed Sheila had suffered a psychotic episode, killed her parents, murdered her children, and then turned the gun on herself. Within hours, the case was being treated as a tragic but straightforward murder-suicide. It seemed to make sense. The rifle belonged to the family. Sheila had a history of mental illness. The house had been locked from the inside, but as the investigation continued, small but troubling details began to emerge. Sheila had 2 gunshot wounds, something that raised questions about whether her death could truly have been a suicide. The position of the rifle did not fully align with the theory. Early handling of the crime scene came under scrutiny, with concerns that evidence may have been disturbed or overlooked in the rush to close the case. Then came the moment that changed everything. Jeremy Bamber's former girlfriend, Julie Mugford, approached police with a shocking claim. She said Jeremy had spoken openly about killing his family. According to her, he had complained about his parents, resented Sheila, and talked repeatedly about inheriting the farm. She alleged that Jeremy had discussed hiring a hitman, using a silencer, and staging the scene to make it look like Sheila was responsible. Most chilling of all, she claimed that on the night of the murders, Jeremy told her, "It's tonight or never." With that testimony, the focus of the investigation shifted dramatically. Jeremy Bamber was no longer just the son who had made the emergency call. He became the prime suspect. Prosecutors now argued a very different version of events. They claimed Jeremy had driven to White House Farm after the phone call, entered the house, and systematically murdered his family using the .22 rifle. According to the prosecution, he then staged the scene to frame Sheila, placing the weapon near her body and locking the house to suggest a murder-suicide. A key part of their case centered on a rifle silencer, which they claimed made it physically impossible for Sheila to have killed herself. Jeremy Bamber's trial began in October 1986. The prosecution painted him as a cold, calculating man motivated by greed and resentment. The defense pushed back, arguing that Sheila's mental illness provided a far more plausible explanation that Julie Mugford was unreliable and that the forensic evidence was circumstantial and flawed. They highlighted possible contamination of the crime scene and inconsistencies in police handling of evidence. After weeks of testimony, the jury delivered its verdict. By a majority decision, Jeremy Bamber was found guilty of murdering all 5 members of his family. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a whole life tariff, meaning he would never be released. Yet the story did not end there. Jeremy Bamber has maintained his innocence for decades. He has launched multiple appeals, all unsuccessful. Supporters argue that crucial evidence was misunderstood or mishandled, that the silencer theory is flawed, and that key witnesses were unreliable. Others believe the conviction was justified and that the case against him was overwhelming. Nearly 40 years later, the White House farm murders remain deeply divisive. For some, it is the story of a son who killed his entire family for money. For others, it is a tragic case built on assumptions, imperfect evidence, and a rush to judgment. What cannot be disputed is the loss of 5 lives and the fact that the truth of what happened inside that farmhouse still sparks fierce debate. What do you think really happened at White House Farm? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more true crime deep dives into cases that refuse to fade, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for the next story.